You won't be needed anymore, Lawrence. Security will escort you out. Preston Cole didn't whisper it. He wanted the whole room to hear. 15 CEOs. Every one of them flew in from a different country. Tokyo, Munich, Oslo, Singapore, Sao Paulo. We're 20 minutes from signing a $2.4 billion deal. Pens are out. Contracts ready. And this 38-year-old kid who's been CEO for 18 months decides now is the perfect time to fire me. I'm Lawrence Bennett. I'm 52. I've spent 20 years building this company's international partnerships from nothing. Right now, I'm watching my career get executed in public. But here's what Preston doesn't know. I saw this coming 6 months ago. And the trap I built? He just walked right into it. The words knocked the wind out of me, I'll admit that. But I didn't move. I caught Hiroshi Tanaka's eye across the table. The CEO from Tokyo. He gave me the slightest nod. Not sympathy. Recognition. He knew something Preston didn't. 20 years. That's what I gave to Meridian Global Partners. 20 years of red-eye flights and hotel rooms where room service was cold by the time I could eat it. I missed my son's college graduation for a deal in Zurich nobody else could close. My boy didn't talk to me for 2 years after that. Still doesn't call much. My wife died of cancer 3 years ago. I was in Shanghai when it happened. Couldn't get back in time to say goodbye. That one still keeps me up at night. Some prices are too high, even for a $2 billion deal. I wasn't just some coordinator shuffling papers. I spoke enough Mandarin to negotiate without an interpreter, enough German to catch the mistakes that would have cost millions. My job was building bridges between cultures, contracts, and trust. You know how long it takes to build that kind of trust? Years. Not months. Not LinkedIn connections. Years of handshake deals and steakhouse backrooms. Early morning golf games where the real negotiations happened over the back nine. Late-night whiskey meetings where we hammered out details nobody else even knew were problems. Preston Cole was everything I wasn't. Where I listened, he talked. Where I planned for actual problems, he planned photo ops. The kid had been riding on deals I'd closed long before he learned how to spell memorandum. I heard him once in the hallway. Didn't think I could hear. He told someone the company needed digital native leadership. That's code. Means I'm too old. Means my 20 years of experience doesn't matter because I don't have 50,000 LinkedIn followers. Here's what kills me. Preston kept using these buzzwords. Instagram-ready executive. Disruptive thinking. You know what disruption means to guys like Preston? Breaking things that already work. Then acting surprised when it all falls apart. Now he was making his move. Right here. In front of 15 of the most powerful decision makers in global business. This wasn't just about firing me. It was about humiliation, about showing everyone that the old guard was finished. I didn't stand up right away. My eyes went to my chair at the head of the table. Preston's leather portfolio was already sitting there, open to his notes. He'd been planning this for weeks, maybe months. The heat in my face wasn't embarrassment. It was anger, the slow burn kind, the kind that comes when you realize someone weaponized your own event against you. I stood up slowly. Every eye in the room was on me. The air felt different, colder. Let me back up. Tell you how I got here. 20 years ago, I was a junior associate with an engineering degree and a head full of international business theory I'd never tested. I was 32. Most people thought I was crazy leaving a stable engineering job to chase deals in countries where I barely spoke the language. I spent my nights learning languages, mornings on conference calls with time zones I couldn't track without 3 clocks on my wall. By year 3, I could switch from English to Mandarin to German in a single conversation. I caught the small things, the things that saved contracts from falling apart. I built my reputation on the hard deals, the impossible ones. There was this negotiation in Shanghai, 23 hours straight. We were stuck on one clause about intellectual property rights. The Chinese side wouldn't budge. Our side couldn't give any more ground. At hour 22, I was so tired I could barely see straight. But I caught something. A mistranslation. One word. The interpreter had used the wrong term for license versus transfer. I stopped everything. Called for a break. Spent 30 minutes with their legal team explaining the difference. Once they understood we weren't trying to take ownership, just license the technology, the whole thing unlocked. We shook hands 5 minutes before the deadline. That's the kind of work I did. Not sexy, not Instagram-worthy. But it's what built this company's international business from $200 million to $3 billion in annual revenue. Preston stood on a stage 8 months ago. accepted an Internal Excellence Award for a Munich deal. My deal. The one with Klaus Hoffmann. That project had been minutes from collapse. I'd caught a mistranslation in the penalty clause at midnight the night before signing. Saved the whole thing. Preston never mentioned my name in his acceptance speech. He never had to. The applause washed over him. I sat in the back, knowing I'd just saved his career from its first real failure. Now here we are, standing in the Astor ballroom. Preston thought he'd just taken everything from me. He had no idea what he'd just done. I picked up my briefcase. The leather was worn from 20 years of international terminals. Inside was a small titanium case, no bigger than a car key, military-grade security. Preston thought firing me would be simple, clean, final. He was wrong about that. Preston's ambush didn't come out of nowhere. It had been building for months. Small cuts disguised as strategic changes. The first time he used the phrase digital native leadership, it was over coffee in the executive lounge, casual, testing how far he could push. I didn't react, just nodded, kept drinking my coffee. The second time was in a budget meeting. Instagram-ready executive dropped into a presentation like my 20 years of handshakes and closed deals had an expiration date stamped on them. By the third mention, it was investors want under 40 C-suite. Nobody in the room challenged him. They just looked down at their laptops and pretended they were checking emails. I'd been in this industry long enough to recognize a coup forming. What I didn't expect was that Preston wouldn't wait for a clean transition. He wanted spectacle. And he chose his stage carefully. Today wasn't just any meeting. This was the day 15 CEOs from across the globe gathered to sign our biggest partnership ever. 9 time zones represented in one room, $2.4 billion on the table. He knew the cameras would be in the hallway, the assistants on standby, the stakes sky high. He didn't want me quietly replaced in a Monday morning email blast. He wanted my removal to be part of his big moment. His coronation. 20 minutes before the meeting started, my phone buzzed. Nicole Barnes, one of the few assistants I actually trusted. Her text was short. He brought her. She's in the hall waiting. I knew who her was. Jennifer Pierce, the so-called strategic hire Preston had been grooming to take my place. 32 years old, MBA from Wharton, great at PowerPoint presentations. Couldn't negotiate her way out of a paper bag. I stared at that text for a long moment. The anger came fast, but I didn't show it. After 20 years, you learn to keep your cards close. I adjusted my jacket, reviewed the seating chart one last time, carried on like nothing had changed. A second notification lit up my screen. This one wasn't meant for me. An internal email Preston had accidentally copied me on 3 weeks ago. I'd saved it. Subject line, photo capture, leadership refresh, Astor event. The body of the email detailed where the photographer should position himself. Best angle to capture the wide shot of the new lead replacing the old one. Me being the old one. He wanted my removal documented, packaged, circulated as proof of his visionary leadership. In that moment, I'll be honest, I felt something close to helplessness. There was nothing I could do to stop him from walking into that room and staging his little power play, but under that helplessness was something colder, a certainty. He was walking straight into a trap he didn't even know existed. Let me tell you about the diplomatic clause. Started as an idea 6 months earlier, right around the time Preston won that award for my Munich deal. I was sitting in my office late one night looking at preliminary contracts for this $2.4 billion partnership. And I thought about all the times I'd seen deals fall apart because of sudden leadership changes. A handshake means nothing if the person who gave it is gone the next day. Trust evaporates, the whole thing collapses. So I drafted some language. Simple, neutral, professional. If the principal liaison named in this agreement is replaced or removed at any point before final signing, all memorandums of understanding are automatically void. Void. That's the key word. Not subject to renegotiation. Not requires mutual consent to modify. Void. Dead. Over. The clause didn't mention me by name, but in every draft, every revision, every preliminary document these 15 CEOs signed, I was listed as the principal liaison. Here's the thing. I couldn't present it as self-protection. That would have raised red flags, made people nervous, so I framed it differently. I made it about respect for their time and resources. I used every tool I'd built over 20 years. When I talked to Hiroshi Tanaka, I used soft, careful Japanese, explained how this protected his company's investment. With Klaus Hoffmann, I used clipped, precise German, emphasized the risk mitigation aspect. With the Beijing delegation, I used Mandarin and talked about guanxi, the importance of relationship continuity. You invest months of work, I told each of them. You deserve to know the person you trust will be there until the ink dries. One by one, they agreed. Some saw it as protection against corporate chaos. Others liked the quiet leverage it gave them. A few understood exactly what I was doing and approved anyway. And Preston? He signed off on the contract drafts without a second look, too busy with branding mock-ups and press releases about our bold new direction. The clause was buried in paragraph 9, under mutual obligations. Preston never read past the executive summary on anything. I remember when Hiroshi lingered after a video call. His voice dropped low. Lawrence-san, if he tries to push you out, we will leave the table. All of us. No drama, just a fact. That's the kind of loyalty you can't buy with LinkedIn posts or Instagram stories. You earn it. Over years. Over deals where you protected their interests like they were your own. The diplomatic clause was only the first lock. The second was smaller, more personal. Every MOU on that table looked final. Pages thick with clauses. Signatures already in place from each CEO. But those were drafts. Legally binding in appearance only. The real enforceable versions required one last thing. My encrypted digital signature. Without it, those documents were just expensive paper. That signature wasn't stored on any company's server. Never was. It lived on a hardware security token, the one in my briefcase. The titanium case I mentioned earlier, I carried it everywhere. Zurich, Tokyo, Sao Paulo, Shanghai, even today. The system was my idea. Came up 3 years ago after a close call. We almost had a competitor slip in a falsified approval while I was in transit between Munich and Singapore. Would have cost us $400 million if our legal team hadn't caught it at the last second. After that, I went to our attorney, Diane Foster. Smart woman. We designed a secure signing process together. Once my token was authenticated and my passcode entered, the signature would timestamp the final contract. Iron-clockable, verifiable, legal. If anyone tried to access the files without authorization, the system would flag it immediately. Alerts would go out to my personal attorney and an external law firm we kept on retainer. The best part? The system was approved and implemented 3 years ago, before Preston's time. He inherited it, never questioned it, probably never even knew the details. I could feel the weight of that token in my briefcase as Preston strutted around the Astor Ballroom. He thought firing me in front of 15 CEOs had stripped away every bit of leverage I had, every thread of influence. But influence doesn't vanish when you leave the room, not real influence. It follows the chain of trust. And I still held the final link. The moment I stepped away from my chair, something shifted. I didn't speak, didn't protest, just pushed my chair in with the same care I'd used setting up the room hours earlier. That silence meant something. If you've been in enough boardrooms, you know that silence means something's about to go sideways. Around the table, pens that had been hovering over contracts slowly lowered. Pages that had been spread open got drawn together, stacked neatly. I caught eyes meeting across the oval. Quick glances. Calculations happening in real time. Preston didn't notice. Or maybe he noticed but thought it was deference, respect for his authority. He moved into my seat. Started flipping through the MOUs like a man who'd already won. Let's proceed, he said, trying to sound confident, trying to recapture the momentum I'd built over 6 months of careful negotiation. But momentum is fragile. It lives in trust, and the trust in that room had just walked out with me. Preston spent the first few minutes reciting boilerplate, standard language about partnership objectives and revenue projections, stuff anyone could read off a page. Then Bjorn Larsen spoke up. The CEO from Oslo. He leaned back in his chair. His voice was calm, direct. Mr. Cole, could you clarify the scope and application of Clause 17? The question hung in the air. Clause 17 wasn't just a number. It was the keystone. The thing that balanced risk allocation across 12 different jurisdictions. I'd written it, negotiated it, defended it through 14 revisions and twice as many conference calls. Preston had never been in the room for any of those discussions. I watched him freeze, just for a second. His eyes darted to the page, scanning, looking for something that would give him an answer. "Well," he began. "Clause 17 addresses the scope of—" Klaus Hoffmann cut him off. "The CEO from Munich." His German accent made every word sharp. "Precise. Without Lawrence, who ensures our terms are honored?" That wasn't a question looking for an answer. That was an indictment. Around the table, subtle movements started. Michelle Dubois from Toronto closed her leather folder with a quiet snap. Rafael Costa from Sao Paulo capped his pen, set it precisely in the center of his notepad. Bjorn didn't break his gaze from Preston. From the corner of the room, 2 interpreters quietly gathered their headsets and notebooks. They walked toward the door without a word. One of the legal aides followed them out. The sound of that door closing was louder than it should have been. Preston's voice started to falter. His sentences got thinner. He flipped pages too quickly, speed trying to mask the fact that he had no idea what he was talking about. The silence in the room wasn't empty anymore. It was full of calculation, full of unspoken conclusions, full of the knowledge that this meeting wasn't moving toward signatures anymore. It was moving toward exits. I stayed where I was, a few steps back from the table, briefcase over my shoulder, hands loose at my sides. I didn't need to speak. In rooms like this, silence says everything. Then it happened. The thing Preston should have seen coming but didn't. Bjorn stood up, slowly. His chair scraped against the marble floor. That sound? In a room like that? It means the deal's dead. He smoothed his jacket. His voice carried the weight of a final verdict. As per the diplomatic clause, our memorandum is now void. Without the named liaison, there is no agreement. He wasn't asking. He wasn't negotiating. He was stating a fact. For a moment, Preston didn't move. He seemed to think he could talk his way out of this, the way he talked his way through everything. "We can still move forward," he started, gesturing at the folders. "We have consensus on the—" But Bjorn was already closing his briefcase. He walked toward the door without another glance. That was the crack in the dam. Rafael stood next, muttered something to his aide in Portuguese, followed Bjorn out. Michelle leaned to her interpreter, nodded once, started gathering her papers. Preston's voice rose, that brittle edge creeping in that happens when someone realizes they're losing control. "If we could all just please sit down, we can resolve any concerns." They didn't even look at him. I stayed still, hands folded. This wasn't my fight to win anymore. I'd already won the moment Preston removed me. Now I was just watching the inevitable play out. Klaus moved next. He walked the length of the table, his hand extended, not to Preston, to me. His grip was firm, steady. "You were always the deal, Lawrence," he said quietly. His eyes locked with mine for a beat. Then he released my hand and turned toward the door. Preston heard it. I saw his jaw tighten. Something like panic flashed behind his eyes. Near the end of the table, Michelle stood but didn't take her pen with her. She set it down in the center of her open folder, ink tip facing away from her. In certain circles, that gesture is understood. The pen left behind means the deal is over, permanently. Preston saw it too. He stepped toward her, voice cracking slightly. "We can fix this. Just give me—" The door closed behind her before he could finish. One by one, the seats emptied. Tokyo, Singapore, Sao Paulo, London, Sydney, Dubai, Shanghai, Seoul, Paris, Mexico City, all 15 of them. Not a single one stayed. What remained at the table were untouched water glasses, scattered translation headsets, and the faint echo of expensive shoes on marble fading down the hallway. I didn't smile, not outwardly, but somewhere deep inside there was a slow, steady pulse of satisfaction, the kind that comes when the truth doesn't need defending because it's already walking out the door. I was halfway down the marble hallway when the first raised voice reached me. Preston, sharp, brittle, the sound of someone whose world just collapsed. I slowed down, pretended to check my phone. The words carried through the half-open conference doors. "Get legal on the line, now." Chairs scraped. Someone fumbled with a speakerphone. Our chief counsel's voice came through, clipped, clear. Preston, without the named liaison's participation at final signing, Clause 9 voids all MOUs, and without his encrypted signature, the system will not authenticate the contracts. A pause, long enough for me to picture his face going pale. We'll override it. You can't. It's hard-coded. Even attempting to bypass would trigger legal alerts to external counsel. Silence. Then the faint click of a laptop opening. A groan. He was staring at the message I knew would be there. Final signature missing. Contract invalid. An email notification pinged. Sharp. Urgent. A moment later, a junior staffer came rushing out, phone in hand, whispering frantically to another assistant. I caught fragments as they hurried past me. From Oslo, sent to the board, said they don't work with instability. Perfect. I could hear Preston inside, still trying to control the narrative. Draft a statement. Market stability. Strong leadership. No one says void. No one says withdrawal. His voice kept rising. Like volume could rewrite reality. But reality was moving faster than him. The elevator doors slid shut, cut off the sound completely. I let myself smile then. Small. Private. I didn't need to see the panic to know exactly what it looked like. Outside, the cold air hit different. Sharper. I walked slowly down the granite steps, each one lighter than the last. Halfway across the plaza, my phone buzzed. Hiroshi Tanaka, I stepped aside. Let the crowd of pedestrians flow past. Lawrence-san, I believe you have already heard the outcome inside. I have. Good. We would like you to serve as our direct advisor for the next phase of this project, not as an employee of your company, as an independent, full authority on negotiations, and the budget to match. Independent, full authority. Those words meant everything. That's generous, I said. It's deserved. Without you, there is no foundation for trust. We want the foundation. We talked for a few more minutes, sketched out what would become my new role. The compensation was higher than I'd ever earned under Preston. The autonomy was absolute. When the call ended, my phone vibrated again. Text from Klaus. If you're available, we'd like to bring you on to lead our portion of the venture. Same conditions, only if you're at the helm. 2 offers in less than 10 minutes. A third notification appeared. Unfamiliar number. We are prepared to sign once Lawrence Bennett is confirmed as lead negotiator, a major institutional investor who'd been on the fence for months. I stood there, city noise blurring around me. In the space of a single morning, Preston had lost the confidence of the entire global boardroom, while I'd been handed the keys to it. I walked toward a quiet cafe a few blocks away. Seemed like the right place to start drafting my own terms. After 20 years of building bridges for someone else to walk across, I was finally deciding where they led. 3 months later, I'm sitting in my new office. Corner suite, 45th floor, mahogany desk that's actually mine, not some company asset. The view overlooks the harbor where my first container ship docked back in 2005. Full circle. I'm not an advisor anymore. I founded my own firm, Bennett & Associates. Boutique M&A shop specializing in international partnerships. 3 of the CEOs from that day are founding partners with me. Hiroshi, Klaus, Arjun from Singapore. The deal we closed last week, $2.8 billion, 16 CEOs, larger than what Preston lost. The circle I drew was bigger than the one he tried to erase me from. There's a knock on my door. Klaus steps in. That same measured confidence. But now there's something else. Partnership. Equal footing. Lawrence, the finalized MOU. We've all signed. Yours is the last signature. I open it. My name printed cleanly at the top. Chief Negotiation Advisor. Not buried in footnotes. Standing in bold. We walk into the conference room. I sit at the head of the table. When the conversation begins, my hand brushes something at the corner. A pen. Sleek. Black. The one Klaus left behind on the Astor table that day. The quiet symbol that the deal was over without me. Thought you should have it, Klaus says. Belongs to the person who kept the deal honest. I turn the pen in my hand. The weight of it isn't physical. It's 20 years. 20 years of flights and sacrifices and quiet victories that belong to someone else. Until now. When it's time to sign, the room goes quiet. No cameras, no applause. Just the sound of pen on paper. I cap the pen, set it on the table in front of me. The victory isn't about proving Preston wrong. It's about proving myself right all along. Oh, and Preston? Heard through the grapevine he got fired 6 weeks after the Astor disaster. Board couldn't ignore the fact that he'd torpedoed a $2.4 billion deal in front of 15 witnesses. Last I heard, he's working for a mid-sized firm in Chicago. Reports to a 55-year-old VP who doesn't care about Instagram followers. Sometimes the old guard wins after all.